The National Football League 2016, Case Keenum, ties, Blake Bortles, low television ratings, illegal formation penalties, Blake Bortles. This is Talking Football Live. Welcome to Talking Football Live, presented by Miller Lite. I'm Kevin Clark. I'm with three fantastic Ringer writers, Rodger Sherman, Robert Mays, Danny Kelly. Guys, it's been kind of a weird year in the NFL. The only constant is that the Cleveland Browns are winless. They're terrible. We knew that was going to happen. But tell me the most surprising thing you've had this year that really took you by surprise. Robert, we'll start with you.
Mine's the Arizona Cardinals still to this point. I think that not necessarily in wins and losses because their defense has been okay, but that offense was such a high-flying group last year, probably the most dynamic offense in the entire league if you really break it down. And how grounded their passing game has been from the start with relatively the same personnel. It's not as if they lost any big names. So the fact that they haven't been able to sustain that with really the same group of guys that we know, that's been really shocking to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought they were going to win the Super Bowl. Danny, is there something you can point to, a reason the Cardinals haven't been as good?
I mean, we talked about it on the podcast before. It's like there's so many things that have to happen correct for that like deep passing game to run. You know, like they have to have protection. The accuracy has to be downfield, and Carson Palmer struggled with that a little bit. And the receivers have struggled with drops. I mean, it's a razor's edge, and they were running on it for a long time last year, but it just kind of hasn't worked this year.
Does anyone think they get better, or is this just them?
Offensively, I don't think they really can. I mean, I feel like the way Carson Palmer's playing, with the lack of protection they have, those little tiny imperfections that really can make the entire thing a disaster, those aren't going away. I feel like they've already shifted into a different version of themselves, with David Johnson being such a heavier usage guy.
Now they're like runners.
Exactly. It's just such a different style. I don't even know if they want to be that group again.
They got injuries on offensive line, too, now.
Yeah.
Like Valder's out. I don't know
Mathis has been out since week 3.
So it's like just getting worse. I don't know. It's interesting.
Maybe the most dynamic offense in the league last year now has to be a team that, if they're going to make the playoffs, has to win ugly, which is such a huge shift from where they were a year ago. It still is hard for me to wrap my mind around.
NFC's crappy, though. If they make a run, they can sneak in.
Their defense is good enough that you think maybe they can string some together just based on the running game and Patrick Peterson and the rest of those guys. But I just never thought that would be where this team would be halfway into the season.
Yeah, Honey Badger banged up now. I don't like their chances at this point.
They did put up 6 points on the Seahawks, though. So, that's a great
and the greatest game ever played. Yeah. Least surprising thing, Robert?
Tom Brady and the Patriots are a monolith. I mean, I think that him coming back and them being the best offense in football over that stretch, it hasn't been all season, but just the efficiency they play with, Gronk turning into a monster again. I feel like you can kind of set your watch to what New England is on offense, and really the beat goes on with them.
Yeah, we're getting into Super Bowl predictions later, so we won't talk more about the Patriots at this point. Rodger, most surprising thing for you this year?
I was surprised by the Minnesota Vikings. So how much of a cataclysm can happen to a team in the first couple weeks of the season? Like when you have, Teddy Bridgewater and Adrian Peterson both, lost, like the two players that sort of seemed like the rocks.
Have you ever heard of them canceling practice like midway through? I've never heard of an NFL team doing that.
This sucks too much. We have to go.
Everyone was so sad that they had to cancel practice.
So I'd say the most surprising thing that happened this NFL season is that after that, really, like, you figure maybe they could survive one of those players being lost.
Right.
Both of them go out, and they still start out really well. The defense carries them. Sam Bradford looked okay, which was enough, and they start out 5-0. And I'd also say the least surprising thing about the NFL season so far is that in the past 2 weeks they have looked like total garbage, and their offensive coordinator has resigned, and we're not even sure if that awesome start can hold up in the light of those two big losses.
Mays, I'll ask you, Norv Turner's departure, what does that mean? Does that mean we're no longer looking at sort of NFC favorites right now?
I don't think it's as much Norv Turner as it is the injuries they've had along the offensive line. I think you look at some of the teams that are really banged up in the league right now. San Diego comes to mind. They lost receivers, key players, but they haven't lost linemen. And with Minnesota, they were able to sustain losing Bridgewater, sustain losing Peterson. But when you lose both of your starting tackles and you can no longer protect your quarterback, it all starts to crumble. So I'm not sure if it matters, Pat Shurmur or Norv Turner. If they can't protect Teddy Bridgewater and they can't run the ball, it doesn't matter who's coordinating the offense.
I mean, the clock is ticking on the next Sam Bradford injury, too.
I agree.
how long is that going to be? Another couple weeks?
But Mays, you said you don't know if it matters, Shermer or Turner. I've seen Shermer. It matters. Trust me. It's going to get very ugly.
That's true. We've seen Shermer with Bradford.
Yeah,
so
we've
it's
seen
got
that
even
exact
more
same
new elements
scenario.
in play here to give us hope.
Yeah, it will be a complete disaster, I assure you. Danny, most surprising thing?
Mine's been the fall from grace of the Panthers. I think it's just, that team was so dominant last year, 15-1, and then they made it to the Super Bowl pretty easily. It's just strange to see them struggle so badly. And, it's kind of similar to the Cardinals. They didn't lose a ton of players. Obviously, Josh Norman is the biggest one. But, I'd like to hear your guys' opinions about why that happened. Is it just because of Norman? Is it, is that enough to kind of make everything, just a little bit worse on defense, or what's going on with them?
Yeah, Rodger?
Well, it's so strange to see this year. After last year, Cam Newton really did seem kind of like a Superman.
Yeah, right, really exactly.
Indestructible. This is a dude who could, literally get into a car crash, and he missed time, but he was back later.
Yeah.
And this year, it just seems like he hasn't found his rhythm. The way he's been officiated has been a big talking point. He didn't seem like someone last year who needed to be protected, and this year, when there are that many concerns about him being hit, that never seemed like something that we would have talked about after a season where they went 15-1 because of his just strength and power.
Yeah.
Robert, is this a blip on the radar, or is this Cam Newton now?
I think it's a blip on the radar in terms of what we expect from him in that offense. He's still a superstar quarterback. For me, I think the offense there's hope there.
Yeah.
And the linemen are still healthy. You have Kelvin Benjamin back. I feel like there's a stride they can hit. Defensively, it's where I feel like there's no coming back. We talk about Josh Norman, and that's definitely the biggest name. But think about the Jared Allen trade from last year. They traded midseason for Jared Allen. He starts for them instantly. This is a team that was thin at more spots than just cornerback.
Yeah.
So when you no longer have Norman, you have rookie corners, you don't have the pass rush you had a year ago, it's easy to see why it's been kind of a domino effect. And I just think that with the personnel they currently have in-house, there's no way it gets better this year.
Yeah. Danny, least surprising thing quickly?
That the Cowboys can run the hell out of the ball. We all saw that coming. That offensive line is ridiculously stacked, and Ezekiel Elliott is just amazing to watch. So
I see you getting excited over there.
I was so stoked about that before the year. And then the first couple of games, it wasn't all that great, but they've really hit their stride.
The most surprising thing for me this year has just been the drop-off in national TV ratings. It's not an aberration at this point. It's 20% in primetime windows. I always saw the NFL as this sort of indestructible, doesn't matter if there's an election, doesn't matter if there's a World Series. They're just going to get their $25 million for a primetime game. That's not happening now. And I don't know necessarily if next week when the election's over, everyone comes back en masse. I think it's going to be a much slower uptick than everybody thinks.
Part of it has been some of the primetime games have been a little poopy.
No, I agree with that. But I do, there have been good primetime games, and even the close, Texans-Colts is a great example. There was a big comeback in the fourth quarter. I know Brock Osweiler was involved, and that's a ratings killer. But overall, I think America would have embraced that game in 2011, 2012. It's just America's tuning out at a much higher clip now. And the least surprising thing for me, it's Denver. We sat here in the preseason, we said there's no chance that Denver repeats. There's no chance they maybe even make win the AFC West. And now, not only are they going to win the AFC West, they're probably going to get to the damn Super Bowl. And Von Miller is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. And I don't know why we talked ourselves out of Denver.
I'm kicking myself for the Von Miller Defensive Player of the Year thing. I always said I'd pick Watt when he was healthy for the rest of the time. He wasn't coming into the season. And I shouldn't have ever thought it. Von Miller looked like the best player in the NFL at the end of last year. Why wouldn't he be the best defensive player in a Wattless universe?
Derek Wolfe, another great pass rusher, said he told Phillip Rivers last week he was going to eat his children.
That seems like a thing Derek Wolfe would do.
It's a very Broncos defense. They're getting an identity now. It's a children-eating identity. Anyway, we'll be right back. Enjoy these deep thoughts. We don't put enough effort into scouting quarterback names. Here are the worst quarterbacks in the NFL right now: Brock Osweiler, Case Keenum, Blake Bortles. You may have thought at some point that Blake Bortles had some potential, but I always knew his name was Blake Bortles. Names matter. There's a reason villains are named things like Lord Voldemort. Derek Carr, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, these are the great quarterback names. If I ran an NFL team, there'd be a guy in charge of just scouting quarterback names. He'd stand in the corner of the war room and he'd say things like, does anyone realize we're passing on a guy named Dak Prescott? Look at the Patriots. Tom Brady, great name. Jimmy Garoppolo, great name. Jacoby Brissett, possibly the best name. Then look at Denver, a much worse offense. Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't New England better on offense because they have actually good quarterbacks and not because of the names? All I'm asking is, are you sure about that? Welcome back to Talking Football Live, presented by Miller Lite. Guys, kind of a weird year in the NFL in one big sense, and that's everyone's talking about whether the league is going to survive long term, whether that this ratings downfall is a blip on the radar, whether they can continue to, whether it's going to continue to go. My question is the NFL in trouble? It's a big, broad question, but I'd like to hear your perspective, Robert.
In trouble, I think, is a little bit strong, but I do feel like the product overall and how it's sold, the way it looks on TV, that is down compared to what it's been years past. Yeah. We talked about the primetime games. Mm-hmm. How do you sell these primetime games? Trevor Siemian is the quarterback in the first game of the season on national TV. I'm sorry.
Don't disrespect.
I apologize, but that's kind of where
Siemian.
we've stepped into right now. The fact that Dak Prescott is a fourth-round rookie quarterback and looks like one of the best in football, it just feels like there's a void at the top of the league, and that has made the interest in it a little bit less. And also, think about how many more taunting penalties there are. Think about how often we're talking about uniform stuff. It just feels like the league is legislating out any sort of sneaky interest we could build for it.
Right.
And when the teams aren't good and when the quality of play is down overall, having that stuff also be falling away, it really is a recipe for people just not being locked into the sport like they have in years past.
It's a cliche that everyone says, "Oh, the no fun league," and that's a total cliche or whatever. But honestly, that's how it feels lately. Like that was my main point. Is like the competition committee is like way over legislating the. Yeah. I mean, Earl Thomas hugged a ref the other day and got flagged. Like Vernon Davis was shooting shot the ball or whatever when he scored a touchdown. That's a flag. Like what's the what are they expecting these flags to like? Why do they do that?
I think the NFL just has to stop being wrong about literally every issue that they come across.
Everything.
Like
they're batting 1,000. It's incredible.
No matter what it is, like whether it's stupid things like the players want to put things on their shoes, or serious things like how do we treat people who have been involved in domestic violence. The NFL is wrong on everything, and they think that no matter what, the letters NFL will get people to care and tune in. They think that they can put a game on Thursday night, a game on Sunday morning, a game on Sunday night, a game on Monday night, and all of them be pretty mediocre, and people will still care, even if they eliminate any fun things. They just have operated for so long under the assumption that because it is the National Football League, all capitals, National Football League, people will care. And I think they're finding that that's not true. I think they're going to have to be more, sensitive and thoughtful about how they present themselves instead of just trying to be this, brand. I think they actually do have to take steps to make sure that their product and presentation is as good as it can be instead of just being like, we're the NFL, watch us.
Do you think that they are, though? Like, do you think they're actually aware of that?
They're probably not aware yet, but if the ratings continue to be bad, the ratings have been always a thing that they can set their watch to.
Sell it,
and if they can't do that, they'll realize that there's a problem. Like so much of whenever you read an article about Roger Goodell, one of the ones that's like trying to be nice to him, it's like the league has increased in stature under him. But what he's never done anything besides have the NFL continue to exist. And
be a perfect television product that is the ultimate sport for sitting there and watching it, being able to talk to your buddy, having a play, have a break, just totally built into what's going on. It's perfect for TV. It's a perpetual motion machine. And him not screwing it up is really all you can say about it.
Maybe the solution to all of this is the NFL makes a decision, Goodell makes a decision, then there's a guy above Goodell, and he just does the opposite. Just whatever they come up with. He says, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do the opposite of what you guys come up with.
Streamline decision making. I think that's actually a good move.
You were talking about so oversaturation. I think there's a game going on right now, actually. I think they're just doing a Thursday afternoon game, then there's a Thursday at 2 a.m. game. So guys,
I've watched the Thursday afternoon game, and that's just like the extent of my sickness, which is a problem.
Robert, you're an offensive line aficionado. You're a guy who likes to study the trenches. People talk about sort of just the quality of play, whether or not fundamentals are worse than they were 10 years ago. As someone who follows this closely, is the style and quality of play down from 5, 10, 15 years ago?
I feel like offensively we have a league that is not quite at the level that the defenses are.
Yeah.
So line play is a big part of that, and I do think that there is a little bit of an epidemic of offensive line struggles. You look at teams like Seattle, teams like Minnesota, otherwise really nice rosters that are completely just sabotaged by the play they have up front. And if you look at just what's happened over the last 5 years or so, defense has reigned. You think about that Super Bowl between the Seahawks and the Broncos. Yeah. You have the defensive team winning. Think about last year where Carolina's the number one scoring offense in football. They go and play the Broncos. The Broncos dominate the game. It feels like defenses are what really bring teams to a Super Bowl caliber level. And when you're watching games now, national TV, whatever, you want to see the Cowboys play the Raiders.
Yeah.
You don't want to see the Broncos play the Vikings.
Right.
As good as the defensive play can be, it just doesn't translate into as entertaining of a television product. So I feel like interest in the league has kind of been dampened by the fact that those are our best teams right now. I'm not sure if teams are worse, but the type of teams that are at the top are different.
Rodger, are quarterbacks worse than ever?
I think the number one sign that like people are overreacting a little bit to the quality is like quarterbacks and kickers. Quarterbacks and kickers are both statistically far better than they've been at any point in the history of the sport. But we see them mess up more. We see them mess up more because we're paying more attention.
Yeah.
We see,
or we're just watching more Tampa Bay Bucks games.
Yeah, we're watching more.
Mistakes from quarterbacks, mistakes from kickers.
That's like,
it's like statistically, like the worst kickers in the league now would have been like Hall of Famers, like in the 1970s and 80s. Like it's just come so far, and you can see it if you look at the numbers. But when we have access to see everything, we see mistakes. Quarterbacks, even rookies, are coming into the league and putting out numbers that would have been unheard of, 2 decades ago.
But if numbers across the board are all elevated, then does it matter that the worst guys are better than they've ever been? If you still are worse compared to your peers at a level that's considerable, doesn't that, because quarterbacks can be so good, doesn't that mean if you have a lesser one, even if he's better than the ones that have come before, that's still a significant problem?
There are obviously levels there, but when people say like the quality of the NFL is down, maybe it's true with regards to itself, but I think there's just this desire to say that things were better a certain amount of time ago, and this is true in every
sport. It's not unique, or
this is true
in a walk of life.
Yes, that this may be topical or related to things happening in America otherwise, but people want to say things were better in the past, and if you look at quarterback and kicker play, it's very clearly not, even if you want to crap on them.
Danny, last word to you. How do you fix it? Developmental League, what do you do?
Oh man, that's tough, because Developmental League is like, that's just a Pandora's box in terms of injuries. It's so difficult for them to do that. I don't know how they would do that.
Shelf life makes it tough.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's like you can't have a minor league guy, like a running back, in the minor leagues for a year or two.
I meant more in the spring, or like an NFL Europe system.
Yeah. I think it would help a lot if colleges would decide to do pro-style stuff. That's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
But
horses out of the barn.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if the NFL is kind of having something that the NBA went through, where there was a lack of superstars for a little while, and maybe you wrote about it. I think it's like when the next generation of superstar quarterbacks comes out, maybe that will help things. Maybe. I don't know.
If there is one.
Who's the face of the league right now if it's not Tom Brady?
I mean,
Aaron Rodgers has not played well. Cam Newton in his post-MVP season has taken a swoon.
Yeah.
It just feels like there aren't a lot of guys that you're tuning into just based on the name alone anymore.
And the NFL does not want Tom Brady to be the face of the league.
Yeah,
they spend
not,
a lot of money to make sure that is not the
Right.
case.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I think that the general thing, I think there's the debate over whether or not the pace of play or the quality of play is worse is a weird debate, because if we think it's bad, it's bad. It's one of those things where it's in the eye of the beholder, and it's self-fulfilling prophecy. But if we're watching football and we're not enjoying it, it is a less enjoyable product. That's how products work.
I crave the Raiders and the Cowboys. They're like an oasis in the desert.
Yeah.
And
It's cool that both of those
that's
teams.
not how I felt for a while.
Yeah.
Remember when everyone was talking about how the NFL's better when the Raiders are good?
Yeah.
You know that saying, like everyone says that, but they're better now. Is the NFL good now?
Maybe there are some teams that I like watching them on my television, and the Raiders and Cowboys might be two of them.
That's for sure. Like I have, like when some teams are on, like the Titans say, I'm just like, God, I just don't want to watch this. Even if they're good, and I mean they're like they're like way better than this. Like I thought they'd be this year.
And
I'm like, man, the Titans are boring.
You heard it here first. Danny Kelly skipping the Titans Super Bowl in February. We'll be right back.
Something that's great about football, or actually one of the things about football that's terrible, is that there are dozens, maybe hundreds of rules that most fans don't know about or think about. Some rules the players and coaches don't know about. Lots of times every football game someone calls a fair catch. They wave, their team takes over on offense from the spot they catch the ball at. But there's actually something else that can happen, the fair catch kick. Your kicker comes out, your holder comes out, you can take a field goal from that exact spot. It's only happened 4 times since 1990. All of them have missed. Most of them haven't really even been close. But someday, someone will attempt and hit a fair catch kick. And after decades where this rule was completely worthless, someday it will be worth 3 points to one team. Someday it'll happen. Someday.
Welcome back to Talking Football Live, presented by Miller Lite. Guys, got a whole half season ahead of us. We're going to give out some superlatives already. We're going to do most likely to, like we're back in high school. For instance, most likely to murder his own offensive line, Andrew Luck. Most sacked quarterback in the league. His career is tanking. He's having probably the best passing season of his career, and yet he's going to probably end up out for the season within about 3 weeks because his offensive line is terrible. Robert.
I'm going most likely to form a citywide kind of support group based on all the terrible things that have happened. That's the San Diego Chargers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not only that they're losing these games in such horrifying fashion at the end. It's that they're so promising and then doing that.
And then they're going to lose their team.
Yes. Yeah. When you combine that with having
depressing.
to lose Keenan Allen, losing Danny Woodhead, losing Jason Verrett, who has my heart on defense, and then you go through this miserable year, and then at the end of it, it's going to be snatched away from you anyway.
Although,
I just can't imagine a worse circumstance.
Isn't it like kind of greasing the wheels for them to leave? Like, this is the worst team to watch maybe in the history of the NFL. Just losing every game with 3 minutes to go, and then it's like, oh, we're going to leave now. And everybody in San Diego is going to say, oh, yeah, that's fine, actually. Go ahead.
I kind of agree with you, but just how good they can look in stretches. I feel like you'd have to sit there, especially knowing this might be the last season, and worry about the injuries and worry about the losses late and say, man, what could have been if we had one or two more breaks go our way?
Or 30% more support on the ballot.
Yeah. That too.
It's a game of inches. Danny, how about you?
Okay, so I was the most likely to be the next midseason retiree in the form of Andre Johnson and Arian Foster, and it's a tie between Tony Romo and Percy Harvin.
Who just unretired.
Yes. To be clear, he's only going to last a few more games, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of joking about the Tony Romo thing, but I think that's just kind of, he's broken his back multiple times. Like, how surprising would it be if he was told, we're not going back to you, like if he just decided to call it a career?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to say someone along those lines, Jim Caldwell, but he retired before the season and didn't tell anybody.
Or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no telling which offseason it happened.
Yeah. Roger, your first one?
So I want to talk about who's the most likely person to start at quarterback for the Browns Week 17.
Ooh.
Obviously they've had historic injury failure. No team had had 6 quarterbacks play in 7 weeks since the expansion Buccaneers that went 0-14. So I think it's going to be your Uncle Jeff. He's like, just your Uncle Jeff.
All of our Uncle Jeff. So we've all got one. Sure.
I mean, his team went to states back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think he's still got something left.
He's
in that
local.
arm.
They all live in Ohio.
Yeah, and eventually they're gonna need someone because there are only so many professional quarterbacks in the world that if they keep having quarterbacks injured at this rate, eventually they'll have to turn to someone who's just hanging out, like possibly one of your uncles. And I think Jeff is the one they should turn to.
He's definitely the most athletic of all of our uncles.
Yeah, I mean, you see him on Thanksgiving. Like, he can play. And, like, I think that, you know, it's either going to be him or if Charlie Whitehurst gets healthy.
Oh, please. I hope so.
It's the thing I've really hated most about this season is the fact that we were so close to a season full of Charlie Clipboard being able to carry the Browns, and now it's just been snatched away from us.
He's gone to he's got the low pony.
His hair,
yeah.
I am more envious of his hair than I am any characteristic of any human being alive.
But isn't that amazing that they needed to sign him because like they had 3 quarterback injuries in 3 weeks, and then they signed him, and then he came into play, and then he got injured in the first game he played. How is that possible?
Blessing in disguise until that injury happened. I feel like they were in great hands until he went down.
Yeah, well, they've got the #1 pick possibly in their sights. Well, very much in their sights.
Right.
So it might be nice to let Jeff kick the tires and, you know, just...
Jeff.
Yeah.
All right, my second one, most likely to tie the remaining games. We've had a year of ties. We've had an incredible, obviously, Seattle-Arizona tie, and then we had the almost as incredible Washington-Cincinnati tie, which, I mean, as far as ties go, I'm a tie aficionado. You're a line aficionado. I'm a tie aficionado. It was one of the best ties in the history of the NFL.
It was a draw because it was in England.
There it was. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a good point, yeah.
It's got to be the Baltimore Ravens. They are
that's a great one.
It's a great call.
They are so dull that they would be happy. They would probably celebrate a tie, first of all. John Harbaugh would say we took a lot of positives from this tie. He'd be very excited about it. But also, their fourth quarter output is almost historically bad. So if they're in a tie at the beginning of the fourth quarter, they're obviously not going to score in the fourth. Then they're not going to score in overtime. So it comes up to the opposing team being able to maybe get a field goal or something. But I definitely feel like I think they're averaging less than 3 yards per play in the fourth quarter when they're within one possession. That is just classic evidence that there's going to be 5 more ties.
They tied the Titans, right? Like that's the team
definitely.
that would be. There's no doubt that if they played, it would end 17-17. It's the only way that game could go.
I agree with you on the Ravens, but like I feel like the entire league is either 3-4 or 4-3 right now. So like there's like 20 options that you could. But I do approve of your choice of the
They're
Ravens.
the favorite, but you couldn't really go wrong at this point.
Yeah, it's a league of ties.
What a year! And why are ratings down? Robert, what's your second one?
I think the Falcons are the team most likely to separate themselves from that 3-4, 4-3 muck when you look at the NFC. I think that their offense is for real. You know, last year they had that second half dip. I don't see that this year because a few things. Offensive line's just better across the board. Alex Mack was a huge addition. Year 2, Kyle Shanahan. I feel like Matt Ryan's playing the best football of his career. Yeah. I love the backs. Julio Jones is still a centaur. So that offense, I think, is going to stick around to the level we've seen so far. But what's most encouraging to me is the playmakers they've started to develop on defense. You look at what Vic Beasley's done in his second season. They found a couple more pieces in that front. Deion Jones at linebacker, the rookie, Keanu O'Neal. There's enough young guys on that unit that it feels like over the course of the second half, they're going to start making plays. They're going to start bringing that group toward competency. And when you have that offense playing the way that it is, that's the making of a team that can really take a leap over pretty much every team in the NFC right now except Seattle and Dallas.
Danny, how wrong is Mays that the Falcons are going to be good in the second half?
I'm bullish on the Falcons too.
Wow.
I mean, their defense is tough, but they can score points. I mean, that offense is like ridiculously good. I'm going to agree with you. I think that Ryan in the Shanahan offense is really fun. I think the first year he was in it, he just didn't really get it. You know, they do more bootleg stuff. He was more of like a standstill pocket passer before, but they have 2 great backs. Yeah.
Both of those guys been healthy is huge.
If they made the playoffs, they would have the second worst defense in the history of the playoffs. The worst defense being the 2000 Rams, I believe.
Interesting. Was that the greatest show on earth?
Yeah.
I started tuned out for a second because I just want to clarify something because you called Julio Jones a centaur, and you need hands to catch a football. And
Centaurs have hands.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Yeah, they have horse legs. Yeah, which I mean, like if you've seen Julio Jones, he's pretty much runs like a horse and can catch a football. It does compute to me.
I just really needed to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super great with mythological figures, but I do think that's what a centaur is.
I just forgot what
they can just run fast.
A minotaur is like the big bully thing in the labyrinth. I think a centaur does have human hands.
Yeah. Roger, what's your second most likely?
I think the most likely NFL player to someday get elected to Congress is Richie Incognito.
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
What state would go for
wherever
Richie?
You really well, I mean, I've just seen like,
good tweets.
Florida.
Good tweets.
It probably is Florida. I mean, I hate to do that to you, buddy.
Like
but.
he had the bullying scandal,
done worse.
but he's come back. He's like proudly. He was like the only NFL player willing to go on record with his support of Donald Trump, besides Tom Brady, who just kind of has a hat in his locker.
Yeah.
And I think if he one day decides to run and like say, I was in the NFL, I was like kind of mean to some people and I can get things done, because he's like got a leadership role within the Bills, and which is really weird because he was out of the NFL for being a jerk very recently, and I think he'll be in Congress someday.
That type of player seems to have a really nice situation with the Rex Ryan team, though. I think that type of guy can be set up to succeed in that environment.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any budding congressman in the NFL?
Like,
There's got to be somebody better than Incognito, right?
I was thinking about how like Peyton Manning would like get votes, but he's too married to the sponsorships. You know, like
he would just have like an ethics scandal. Just to, he would attach a rider for $5 million investment in Papa John's.
Just like why would you run for office when you could just keep raking in like just being on TV and being like, I like this company, which is what he does. That's his job, and it's a good job.
I'd heard that Tom Brady, somebody suggested that he would go into politics after his career was over. Could you imagine Tom Brady being a politician?
Jay Cutler?
Oh, I would love that.
Cutler for Congress?
Oh, the debate facial expressions just alone.
Danny, your second one?
So I got the most likely to squander their first place start is the Texans. And it's
in order for that to happen, another team has to jump them, right?
I think it's going to be the Titans, even though they're boring.
Wow.
I'm going out on a limb here. These are supposed to be a little bit weird, but how can Brock Osweiler lead that team to the playoff? I can't see that. He's like 5.8 yards per attempt.
He's like 6'8".
Yeah, he's very tall, which is
So
very
tall.
important.
Yeah, Roger, let's give you 10
how
seconds.
tall?
You're very into this. Tell me about Brock Osweiler's best trait.
Well, he's really tall. He leads the league in the feet above ground, yards above ground.
Which may be more than his yards per attempt at this point.
It
His
probably
yards
is,
above ground.
actually.
Is that your favorite stat in the NFL? Just Brock Osweiler is tall?
Yeah. I just love how tall.
Tallness.
And you said another team's going to have to jump them. How do you jump a 6'8"
Exactly.
guy? You can't piggyback over him.
It is.
Bulletproof Roger.
Okay, you got me. I'm done.
That's what I've always said about Andrew Luck, just not tall enough.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. The height is going to carry them.
All right, we'll be right back.
Something that's always bothered me about watching the NFL is that the technology for those directional parabolic microphones on the sideline hasn't changed in decades. I mean, these things have been in use since World War II. The Cold War's been over for 30 years. You're trying to tell me that neither the Soviets nor the Americans came up with anything more convenient? I don't know, maybe something handheld, maybe something you put in your hat, you hide it in your tooth, you put it in your cigar. I mean, we've got nano processors, we've got little tiny drones that look like bees. I mean, we have that. Why can't we use that? We've got it, I think. The point is, the technology's gotten better and better, smaller and smaller, and these guys are stuck on the sideline carrying a giant decorative bowl attached to a 5-point harness baby Bjorn. I mean, you guys are recording this, you can't even see my microphone.
Welcome back to Talking Football Live, presented by Miller Lite. Guys, it's time for the second half predictions. Let's start off with more reckless predictions, things we won't hold you to, but they do have to be 100% correct. Sorry. I didn't know. Yeah, it's punishable by death. Sorry. Mays, go ahead.
I originally said that I thought Ezekiel Elliott was going to rush for 2,000 yards, but I don't think that's very reckless considering the season he's had.
Yeah.
I think he's going to break the rushing record.
Whoa.
He's going to need to rush for about 145 yards a game on average to do it. But I still think that he's in line for that 250, 260 game that he hasn't had quite yet. Rushing for 9 yards a carry to 160 is a pretty good clip, but I still feel like over the course of the second half, there are a couple monsters just lingering in there. And if he rips off one or two of those and keeps getting the work that he has right now, I feel like it's in play.
I don't necessarily agree with you, and here's why. I think the Cowboys will have a little bit of a cushion in December. I think they may win 13 games. No one else maybe is going to win 12 and sort of be in the hunt by December 15th. And so I feel like they're going to start to dial back his work rate a little bit in the regular season. I don't think he's going to get enough carries to get 140 every week for the rest of the season. I think they're going to say, look, we're going to play 3 playoff games potentially, and they're going to start to dial it back. That's why I think he has the talent to do it, but I don't know if he'll have the situations.
Hopefully there's a couple more games like that Cincy game where he does it in 15 carries and then don't have to worry about it.
Right. Rodger?
This isn't so much for the second half of the season, but my prediction is that the Giants somehow mess up having Odell Beckham Jr.
They're doing their best.
That's not that reckless.
I don't think I've ever enjoyed watching a wide receiver play as much as I've enjoyed him. He's got obviously elite world-class hands. He's really fast. He's a great route runner. And he does everything right, and the Giants get mad at him for talking to a kicking net, and they.
Who amongst us hasn't done that?
And they, it's Eli Manning. Eli Manning is even less of an Eli Manning than he was a few years ago, and I just don't ever see. I don't see a happy ending for Odell Beckham Jr., who is amazing, and the Giants, who are killing his soul.
Yeah, I don't think Eli Manning is the right quarterback for him.
It was good that he threw passes somewhat recklessly that made Odell Beckham Jr. make ridiculous plays, but that's overall not a good quality in a quarterback-wide receiver relationship.
I don't think they've ever met. That's my theory on Eli and Odell. They've just never
You stand over there.
before.
The fact that Ben McAdoo was hired there as a way to continue that offensive system and build some continuity with it, and that offense looks the way it does right now, is one of the better ironies about the NFL season so far. You're going to want to keep
the continuity going with Ben McAdoo.
Yeah,
that was a really good strategy.
You cannot risk losing Ben, because look at what we've built, and what they've built is just really terrible.
No, it's good. It's like when a bad vice president becomes a president, like George H.W. Bush or something. That's not, All right.
It's not,
Well, no. Danny, reckless prediction.
All right, so I know that they're 2-6 right now. I think Jay Cutler is going to lead the Bears back into contention.
No.
That's vague.
I can't believe
I'm not saying
that's very reckless.
In the NFL?
In the NFL.
We're one day removed from my team winning the World Series, and you're trying to ruin my sports year.
I have unabashed fandom of Jay Cutler. He's the greatest quarterback in the NFL, I think. And
is this a non-football answer? Is there something else that Jay Cutler's good at?
Leadership. Did you
leadership.
see?
Okay.
Well, we didn't see it, but he gave a speech before the game last week, and got the whole team psyched up.
You're going to make a Chicago sports talk radio host have an aneurysm.
I seriously don't know how to respond to you right now. All I wanted over the course of the second half of this year was for him to stay on the bench for whoever, hopefully Brian Hoyer to play, for them to lose a bunch of games,
you're rooting for
be in the top 5, and just get. Well, the Browns have that locked up. I'm not. That's way out of line now.
Top 2, though.
But I just really was hoping that it would be an out-and-out disaster, and they could hit the reset button.
Can't.
And then
it was until he gave that speech.
Yes, exactly.
The
Stop
turning
giving
point.
speech, Jay.
Hey, they got the 15th ranked defense by DVOA right now. Everyone kind of thinks that the
top
Browns
half.
suck.
Top half, yeah.
It's not. Well, it's better than suck. I mean, it's not great.
It was inevitable that he would play well enough over a 3 or 4 game stretch that every single person associated with that team would say, "Can we do worse? We can do worse.
They all love
Might
Jay.
as well keep going."
What did he say in the speech? Do we know?
No, I don't know. He told people to play hard.
Something he hasn't been saying for the last 9 years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He told people to play hard. I think
Which
it's
he
really
normally
bad.
hasn't done. Normally he just stands there and people say, he's just standing
He's
there.
very apathetic. Yeah.
All right, my surprise reckless prediction, I think ratings are going to get worse as the season goes on. I think everyone thinks the election's going to take place this week, and then I think Cowboys-Steelers is the week after. Everyone's going to be sort of back to football. That's the notion right now. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that we're still going to be dealing with, A, the fallout from the election, but B, we're kind of a baseball nation right now. 40 million people watched the World Series Game 7 last night. I feel like we're going to start looking around at other sports and see that they're fun too. Maybe we'll watch a Suns-Grizzlies game. I don't know. And so I think we're just going to see a little bit of a fracturing of maybe the NFL's stronghold on Sunday afternoon. That's it. So, all right, guys, moment of truth. Final 4, Super Bowl prediction, and Super Bowl winner. Rodger, we'll start with you.
I think it will be the Patriots, and because I love them, the Raiders in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Not really because, well, I do like the Raiders, but also I don't see anyone else. The AFC is kind of confusing. And the Seahawks and I did have to write it down, and I'm so apathetic about the NFL right now that I literally don't remember
Cowboys?
which team. Yeah, it was the Cowboys.
There you go.
Is there a graphic that's saying that I'm wrong? Possibly. Anyway, I think the Patriots.
That was the ultimate commentary on the State of the League. Right
we're
now.
just
So I feel
talking
like
football.
form and
We're
content
just
are like
talking
melding
football.
together at this point.
I think the Patriots are going to beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, and I don't like any other teams besides those two.
I'm hearing from production truck you did put Dallas.
Good, excellent.
I'm a longtime Cowboys fan.
All right, Robert.
I also have New England. It just seems like there's really no other way to keep them out of it at this point. My other team in the AFC, I think that Roethlisberger comes back sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And I said before the season I thought that Pittsburgh was going to go to the Super Bowl. I don't think that they're going to be the favorite in the AFC because, as we kind of talked about before, home field does matter in the playoffs. With New England kind of rolling and Pittsburgh kind of in this middling state without him, I think New England's going to get home field. I feel like they could beat Pittsburgh in the AFC Championship game. On the other side, I have the same two teams. I just think that Seattle's hard to pick against with that defense and Wilson. And Dallas is for real. I mean, whether it's Romo, whether it's Prescott, that running game plus Dak, plus Rod Marinelli working his magic on defense, they look like the second best or first best team in that conference right now.
Football is always better when Rod Marinelli's good.
Rod Marinelli's always good, man.
Yeah.
If we're blaming things for ratings, Rod Marinelli is definitely not involved. And I also have New England beating the Seahawks. I think that weirdly, the Patriots are a good matchup for Seattle because they don't have a pass rush.
Yeah.
But I still feel like Seattle's deficiencies right now are more considerable than the Patriots.
Okay.
Yeah.
My final four, I have Seattle, just like everybody else, and I have an upset pick. I think a team goes on the road, wins a couple games, gets to the NFC title game, no one sees it coming. It's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, yeah.
I love the defense,
They're
man.
4-3 right now. I can just see Carson Wentz going on the road with some big throws. I think they'll figure out the downfield passing as it goes on. They're going to have to, I mean, they cut Josh Huff today. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with the receiving
When
core
you're cutting
right
Josh
now.
Huff and it's a problem, you know you're in a bad
no,
way.
they just don't. They're just going to have to kind of retool the receiving core going forward. And I feel
What
like
could it have possibly taken to get Torrey Smith from San Francisco? I know they traded a bunch of picks for Carson Wentz, but really?
Yeah,
I mean, it couldn't have been more than like a fifth-round pick.
Torrey
You
Smith
gotta
help
try.
at this point?
One fast guy. That's all I'm asking for.
Carson Wentz is the fastest guy on the team at this
It's
point.
probably true. He's their best athlete.
All right, so Seattle, Philadelphia, I have Seattle winning that game. New England, Oakland, I have Oakland winning that game.
Wow.
I love Derek Carr and his ability to make something out of nothing.
So much
I have
Raiders love.
Seattle over Oakland in the Super Bowl, and
That would be a great game.
I have the over the number of Raider fans in that stadium who pay $5,000 for a ticket.
It would be a great game until Khalil Mack ended Russell Wilson, which I feel like would make you sad.
Yeah, that would not be fun. Nothing could be worse than Super Bowl 49, though. So I can't believe no one else picked the Broncos to.
I know.
But this is what we do as pundits. We sleep on the Broncos, and then in February we're sitting here and we're going, well, we all slept on the Broncos.
Again.
Yeah, Rodger's wearing the same jacket. It's going to be great.
So I've got the Broncos and the Patriots in the AFC. I've got the Falcons and the Cowboys in the NFC.
This is just the worst reverse jinx crap. I love that you're doing this already.
I'm all
just
aboard,
planting
yeah.
the seed.
This is so great.
Cowboys, Patriots in the Super Bowl, and then the Patriots win the Super Bowl.
Here's my reckless prediction. I think if the Cowboys and the Patriots play in the Super Bowl, people will watch.
I agree with that take.
Reckless.
More than 40 million people will. Okay. All right, guys. This was really fun. Rodger Sherman, Robert Mays. I'm Kevin Clark, Danny Kelly. Thank you for joining us. This has been Talking Football Live presented by Miller Lite.